Okay, again, thank you all for coming. Good afternoon and welcome to the October Town Hall here in the Freeman Auditorium at the Hub and the University Park campus. We would like to, first off, thank our co-sponsors for today's event, the University Staff Advisory Council. They are co-sponsoring today's event with Penn State today, so we'd like to thank you for partnering with this for this town hall that has a focus on diversity and inclusion. We are going to address some other questions from the audience, but we really want to focus today's event on diversity and inclusion. And before we start questioning these fine gentlemen, I want to ask you all something. What does diversity and inclusion mean to you? What does it look like to you? And I'd really like you to frame your questions today through that lens. And at the end of the day, we want to make sure that we're all doing everything we can to make Penn State University welcoming for everyone. So, hopefully thinking about those questions will help you form your questions for today's town hall event. Thank you to everyone who has submitted the questions ahead of time, but this is a live event and we will be taking questions as the event goes on. So if you hear something that sparks your interest and want to ask a follow-up, there are several ways that you can submit a question. You can tweet us at PSU, at #PSUstrong. You can email those questions at questions@psu.edu. And if you're here in the live audience, we handed out several slips of paper and pens. You can write your question down on them, and people will come around and take your questions and funnel them into us. And all your questions will be kept anonymous, so feel free to ask anything. And as I said, today does have a focus on diversity and inclusion. So we have, in addition to our normal town hall, thank you, Marcus Whitehurst, for joining us today. Marcus is the Vice Provost for Educational Equity. Joining us, as always, our Senior Vice President for Business and Finance, David Gray, and Executive Vice President and Provost, Nick Jones. Gentlemen, if you would like to say a few words before we start.
Yes, thank you, Ben. I'll lead off. It's gratifying to see so many folks here in Freeman Auditorium, and also I know that there are a number of additional people that are watching via the live stream, both here at the University Park and also at our Commonwealth campuses. So welcome to you all. Before we get started here this afternoon, I do want to quickly address a recurring question that we've received at these town hall meetings related to maternity leave for faculty and staff. We understand that there are a lot of people that are concerned with perceived differences between faculty and staff when it comes to paid leave for birth or adoption of a child. And there are specific differences between faculty and staff when it comes to leave, and employees have options when using university-provided time off to spend with a new child. Faculty members can request paid time off for the birth or adoption of a child, but unlike staff, they do not accrue vacation and sick time. Staff can request paid time off for the birth or adoption of a child through the use of their accrued vacation, personal, and sick time. Please know this, we are committed to reviewing the differences and leave options for faculty and staff. Those differences are there and they're real, and we are working toward developing a balanced and fair resolution. I will promise to keep you updated on the progress of that review. It is underway and we are earnestly working toward that end of fairness and balance in those perceived differences between what we entitle faculty and staff to, which are different. I also want to focus just for a moment on the theme or the focus of today's town hall, diversity and inclusion, and talk to you just momentarily about the efforts that are underway in the division for which I'm responsible, finance and business. We really consider this to be an extremely important priority, so much so that it is one of 5 strategic priorities established in finance and business as part of our strategic plan for the 5-year period that we're in. It is a significant part of how we do business. It is extremely important to us, and an expression of that importance, we asked for and received funding through the university's budget process, and Dr. Jones was very supportive of the hiring of a new senior director of talent, diversity, and inclusion. So we will be launching a search, if we haven't already, a national search to hire a very, very experienced individual who will help drive Penn State's improvement in the recruitment and retention of faculty and staff here at this institution. And we think that is clearly a demonstration of the importance that we place on this initiative. I would also want to mention the Town and Gown Task Force that recently concluded its work this past spring on policing in communities of color. We've released that report. It was a joint report embraced by both the Borough of State College and Penn State University, and we are now working under the auspices of both Assistant Vice President for Police and Public Safety, Charlie Nossinger, and Assistant Borough Manager, Tom King. Both the borough and the university are in implementation of the recommendations of that task force. One of the chief recommendations of which is to increase the diversity profile of our police forces, both at the university and in the Borough of State College. As part of that, we also intend to engage in a dialogue with the surrounding township police forces. The university touches on not only the Borough of State College, but Ferguson Township, Patton Township, and College Township. And so we will also be engaging in dialogue with those municipal jurisdictions about ways in which they also can embrace the goals and objectives of that task force report. So those are just a few illustrations of what we're working on within finance and business to really embrace and drive forward our diversity and inclusion efforts. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. Let me add my welcome to all of you here and those who are participating across the Commonwealth via the live stream online. So this town hall, as has been indicated, is special for, I can think of at least three reasons. First, many of you are sitting towards the front. Thank you for doing that. Second, it does have a focus. Some of the other town halls we've just covered general topics, and this one, as you're aware, is focused on diversity and inclusion and the overall climate across our campuses, and so that is different. And third, we normally give you an opportunity to ask us plenty of questions, but this time we're going to actually look for some opportunities to ask you questions as well while we have you all here. And so we're going to encourage your active participation by responding to some of our questions as well. It's great to be here with David and Marcus, and I can say that all three of us are really seriously committed to this issue. Our areas of focus today are big parts of the university-wide strategic plan for Penn State. As I think most of you are aware, our plan includes an articulation of our 6 core institutional values, identified in part through Penn State's Culture and Values survey that was conducted in 2014 and the Campus Climate Survey that we conducted last year. These values, from my perspective, sustain the strategic plan and offer essential context for fulfilling Penn State's academic mission. One of the values, of course, is respect, and it reads, "We respect the honor and dignity of each person, embrace civil discourse, and foster a diverse, inclusive, and safe community." Another core value is community. We work together for the betterment of our university, the communities we serve, and the world. One of the 6 foundations cited in the strategic plan is fostering and embracing a diverse world. We will continue to foster and sustain an environment of respect and inclusion for faculty, staff, students, and members of the communities we serve. We also will provide programs and environments that embrace diversity and promote broad acceptance of individual differences. Bottom line, and these are not just words, diversity and inclusion are integral parts of Penn State's identity. We've emphasized them in our university-wide strategic plan to show how they are integrated in everything we do at the university. Diversity and inclusion don't have a separate strategic plan because they're part of our institutional fabric. This is an unwavering commitment. Earlier this month, we launched an important initiative that unites us all in at Penn State, which will continue throughout the year and supports the university's commitment to fostering welcoming and inclusive communities that embrace diversity. The initiative also challenges members of the university community to ask what they can do to embrace diversity and to have a positive impact at Penn State and beyond. The initiative's website, allin.psu.edu, is a great resource for learning more about how you can get involved. As individuals, we differ in so many ways: race, ethnicity, religion, gender or gender identity, sexual orientation, socioeconomic status, abilities, veteran status, and many more. Ultimately, however, we are one Penn State, and we insist on it being a safe and welcoming environment for all. Thank you for being here to be part of this important ongoing dialogue. Now I'll hand it to Marcus.
Well, first, I'd also like to thank you all for joining us this afternoon. Also want to thank both Nick and David for inviting me to sit on the panel with them. There's three things that I would like to address in my opening remarks. I'd like to expand on All In and bring some clarification as to the history behind that and why it got kicked off, its connection to the university strategic plan, and some upcoming initiatives that I hope you all will participate in. So All In kicked off on October 6th, okay, and today is October 26th. So we've been in this initiative for 20 days now. Now, have we solved all of the world problems in 20 days? The answer is no. But All In is an ongoing commitment to spotlight the importance of diversity and inclusion at Penn State. We hope to inspire all members of the university community and the community surrounding State College to take an active role in promoting respect and embracing inclusivity. All In was started by a core group of students who wanted the university to recognize the importance of having a diverse and inclusive university. Initially, the focus was on creating an inclusivity video. That video was created, and the video is active and live now on allin.psu.edu. We have identified key individuals at the university to serve as facilitators. There's three ways in which you can utilize this video. We are allowing individuals to have individual dialogues around this particular video. We've established group dialogues around the video, in addition to having panel discussions around the video. And we have facilitators and their photos and their contact information on the website, so you can reach out to them if you would like to utilize this video for any type of discussion. But after several conversations with our students and President Barron, the initial idea around the video emerged into what we have as the All In initiative. All In calls upon everyone to challenge themselves to be who you are together, but to also focus on digging deeper into improving our university. All In can be successful if everyone is all in, with all hands on deck, all day, every day, in all that we do at Penn State. We have four simple goals built around All In, and these are the same goals that are tied into the university strategic plan, which falls under the section Fostering and Embracing a Diverse World. As the Provost mentioned, we're hoping to ask some questions to you all today. And when I think about the goals that we have in place, you know, I want to ask everyone 4 questions around the goals. Goal 1, question: what are you doing to create a welcoming and inclusive campus? Goal 2, what can you do to advance and build a diverse student body? Goal 3, when you're asked to sit on the search committee, what can you do to advance and build a diverse workforce and management? And Goal 4, if you're a faculty member, and most importantly, how can you develop a curriculum that fosters United States and intercultural competencies? All In is asking us to create, advance, build, and develop. That's the call to action. We can't afford to sit back passively and wait for others to make a difference. In being passive, I see this as an opportunity to sit back and do nothing, or to simply pass it on to someone else to do it for you. All In is asking you to make a difference. So I challenge myself and every university leader, every vice president, vice provost, dean, chancellor, to step up and create a signature all-in initiative that reflects diversity and inclusion and works towards creating a welcoming campus climate. We need to move away from the rhetoric of what is Penn State going to do, but to ask ourselves, what am I going to do to reinforce my commitment toward diversity and inclusion? I also challenge every supervisor, director, department head to the same challenge. It starts with our leadership, and that's what All In is all about. Finally, tomorrow, same place here in Freeman Auditorium, we've identified some legal scholars across the university, 4 attorneys, and we'll have an open, candid discussion about the First Amendment and its intersections with diversity and inclusion. So I encourage everyone to join us. We will also live stream it so our campuses could be a part of this. And thank you again for the opportunity to serve on the panel.
All right, thank you. Once again, I'd like to remind you, we do want to hear from you in the audience, so you can tweet us your questions, hashtag PSU Strong. You can email us your questions at psu.edu. And if you're here in the audience, you can write them down on a piece of paper and pass them to the end of the audience, and someone will come along and pick them up. So I'd like to start, gentlemen, with a broad question. How big is your definition of diversity, and what would a diverse campus look like to you?
Go ahead, David.
Diversity, to me, is a very expansive term. I think when we often think of it, perhaps too frequently, we're narrow in our definition or perspective about diversity. But for me, it's a broad term. If we're talking about diversity and inclusion, inclusion means to embrace all and to celebrate all differences. But certainly, we're thinking about racial and ethnic diversity. We're thinking about gender diversity. We're thinking about diversity with respect to sexual orientation, sexual preference, gender expression. We're thinking about diversity with respect to individuals with disabilities. So for me, I believe we should be embracing a very broad, expansive, and inclusive definition of diversity. That certainly is the one that resonates most strongly with me, and it shouldn't be one favored above the other, but again, if we're all in at Penn State, it means all in terms of, I think, a broad and very inclusive definition of diversity.
Yeah, I used some language in my introduction, and David used many of the same words. And I think, for me, one of the challenges that I think we've faced, and we've seen our colleagues in the federal government face it as well, we often refer to regulations and guidelines that try to articulate what diversity is. And every time you look at the guideline, it's changed because another word has been added, because somebody perceived that a word was left out. And so in order to capture diversity, the characterization got longer and longer and longer, and still certain groups or individuals were potentially excluded. That's why I really prefer us to be really thinking about inclusion and looking at how we can, regardless of any of those characterizations, just bring everybody in under one tent and look how all individuals can contribute together for the greater good of society and for our communities. So for me, it really is an issue that's all about inclusion, regardless of what your particular characterization may be. And I think as we developed our new institutional statement on diversity, we tried to get away from that listing and focus more on being inclusive rather rather than articulating all of the different elements.
Yeah, and I see diversity in its broadest sense. Anything that makes us unique in who we are as individuals, to me, represents diversity. But I also agree that diversity should not exist without inclusion, because inclusion, by definition, is the context that puts diversity into action. And if we are thinking that we can just have representation without having that representation feel like it's included on this campus and in the community, then we're doing diversity, we're not doing diversity work the way it should be done. So diversity and inclusion should go hand in hand, but diversity gives us the unique differences that all of us bring to the university and to the community.
In your opening remarks, you mentioned the kickoff to All In. It was a beautiful night. If you weren't lucky enough to see it in person, I really encourage you to go online to Penn State's YouTube channel and watch the video. Not right now. I want you to pay attention to what they're saying. But afterwards, please go to that. It was a beautiful event. But moving forward, this is a campaign, as you mentioned. What are the concrete steps that the university is taking after the All In kickoff event to keep that campaign going strong? Marcus, if you want to start.
Yeah, programs like tomorrow, the panel discussion that's open to the entire university community on the First Amendment and its intersections with diversity and inclusion is one initiative. But the biggest thing that I have to emphasize, back to my opening remarks, All In is really about what you as individuals can bring to this initiative. It's interesting that oftentimes you hear, what is Penn State going to do about this? What is Penn State going to do about that? Who represents Penn State? The individuals here that work for the institution represent the university. So my challenge is I encourage everyone to bring a unique perspective to All In. Bring a signature event to this initiative. Encourage others to be mindful when we're thinking about diversity and inclusion across the university. Particularly, I think everyone here has served on a search committee at some time or another. When you're on the search committee, I think it's important to challenge that search committee to be mindful of the candidates that we bring forth as finalists at this institution. Those who are in a place where they can actually put a search committee together, I encourage individuals to be mindful of having representation on the search committee as best you can to ensure that we're looking at candidates through a diverse lens. So this is a call to action for everyone, and the initiative is going to be successful based on your contributions to moving the needle on diversity and inclusion.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think also about what we're trying to do with the implementation of our strategic plan. A lot of effort went in across the university into developing the plan. We now have a plan. We've launched it. We're going to have a series of catalyzing, I would call them, events over the next several years as we move to implement the plan. But at the end of the day, the success or failure of our strategic plan is not going to hinge on those particular events. It is going to hinge on all of the work that is going on in the background to really advance the vision of the plan. And I think the same is true for All In. Through the course of the year, we're going to have a number of events every month that will keep our institutional focus on the All In initiative. And those events are really catalysts for you all to come together, because the great work that we can do and what we can achieve will be done by you.
I mentioned at the outset some of the specific things we're doing in finance and business through our strategic priority on diversity and inclusion, and I also mentioned specifically about our recruitment of a new senior director for talent, diversity, and inclusion. I want to come back to that because I think it's particularly important. One of the things we often historically have we've wrung our hands about, well, why is it that we haven't had more success in hiring more diversity, a greater diverse profile of faculty and staff across the university? Well, it starts with building pools that are diverse and inclusive to begin with. And that will be one of the foremost roles and responsibilities of this new senior director, is to help provide tools and support for hiring units to be able to build those diverse pools. Because without building the diversity within the pool, we have no prayer of having a diverse outcome through a hiring process. So it starts there, it's elemental and it's fundamental to all we do, and that's why I'm very excited about this step forward, because I think it's just absolutely key to our overall success in building a more diverse and welcoming and inclusive workforce.
If I could just pivot off David's comment, we have a really special opportunity right now, and we may get some more questions later about the VRP, but I think as most of you are aware, we had just short of 600 people accept the voluntary retirement program. 600. That's a big number of faculty and staff across the university who've elected to retire in the next 8 months or so. In many cases, we will be replacing those individuals. I would say in most cases, and I say many, most, in some cases there'll be direct replacements, other cases we'll see it as an opportunity to tweak the way we're structured. Bottom line is there will be a lot of hiring that is going on across this institution in the next 8 months as we move to replace the functionality that the voluntary retirement program has removed. Many of you in this room and those of you who are joining online will be involved in those search processes, either formally on search committees or indirectly. And to David's point, this is a really important opportunity for you not to sort of participate and say, yeah, well, it'd be nice to have some diversity in the pool, but to demand that there be diversity in the pool and leave no stone unturned to ensure that in every search we do, as we look to replace the functionality lost with those 600 departures, that we use this opportunity in this moment to bring in a more diverse workforce than we have had. So seize this moment, seize this opportunity, and view it, as Marcus has been saying, these are times where we need you all to be stepping up and demanding the right types of pools of candidates.
Go ahead.
Then just the last piece, I got excited in my last response and I forgot to mention. Please, I encourage you to go to the All In website for all of the events. I think that answers Ben's initial question, is what's next for All In. The calendar is very expansive. It's just been put on the university website under calendars. There's a host of initiatives and activities, but also on the allin.psu.edu. When I spoke about the video, the inclusivity video, we're hoping that the video will allow us to engage in dialogue. I think we have to get comfortable with the uncomfortable conversation about diversity and inclusion, and this video will spark that type of conversation. So these are some of the initiatives that we're moving forward under the All In campaign.
And we did have a question from the audience directly related to some of the things you guys were just talking about. And how can one member, if they're sitting in the audience or they're watching online, one person who is sitting on that committee, how can they effectively be the person that stands up and says, yes, we do need to create a more diverse pool. We do need to pick a more diverse person to actually get that job. How does one person make that difference?
One person can make all the difference in the world. One person can be that individual who says, I am not willing to move forward with this process until we have reasonable assurance that the action steps are outlined to assure that we're going to build a diverse pool. And I want to know in very concrete and specific terms what is being done, what is the game plan, what is the methodology that we're going to employ to assure that that happens. And by all means, insist upon your right to make sure that those steps are in place before you consent to allowing that process to move forward. It's only through, I think, courage and forthrightness on the part of individuals that serve, and I would hope that everybody would want to become a proactive part and rather than wait to be asked, offer. As a person that has a lot of hiring responsibilities and is engaged in frequent search processes, I'm always appreciative when people step forward and volunteer to engage in search processes. More often than not, that's not the case. We have to go out and try and recruit people to help us serve with searches. So I think folks can do an enormous amount of good simply by stepping forward and then being vocal and proactive as voices for diversity and inclusion in search processes themselves.
Hey, David, I'm sorry, can I ask a question?
You may.
So, I'm interested in knowing, I've been on a couple search committees lately, and there's not really an easy way to tell if you have a diverse candidate pool. Is there something that's going to be incorporated into the HR system to help us do that?
I am very hopeful, Jody, that that's the case. In fact, that's why we are establishing the role that I've mentioned within the Office of Human Resources to really help give guidance and some specific process steps around what will constitute, what does definitionally constitute a diverse pool. How do we know when we're going to green light searches to proceed on the basis of appropriate affirmative steps that have been taken that are outlined? And I would hope we would be looking to this individual to help us shape policies and guidelines and procedures that would go out to all search committees so that they would know and have some concrete guidance and counsel as to what the expectations are for them and when have we, hit that bar of expectation in terms of building or taking the appropriate steps to build diverse pools.
If I could
Right now, as a person with a disability,
Sorry.
people assume I'm going to hear the question when it's way back in the back. I think you should always assume there's somebody who can't hear in a large assembly like this.
I appreciate your concern. As a person who's hearing impaired himself, I should know better and be more sensitive to that. My apologies.
If I could jump in on that, thank you so much for standing up. I was just about to say, I promise you, if you submit the questions in the manner that we have asked, we will be asking them. But for the reason that she illustrated, that there are people who are having a hard time hearing, there are people watching online. If you can submit the questions through us, we will ask them, and that's going to make everyone able to participate in today's event. We appreciate.
Folks don't want to be filtered through what you're saying, and just like what she just said, if we're talking about diversity, you're talking about people stepping up, then I'd like to ask Nick Jones. Eric Barron, President Barron said at his speech, Black Lives Matter. I don't know what you think about that. Because when I tried to ask you about racism on this campus, you treated me like it was a figment of my imagination. While you came before the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences making ethnic jokes. Now, for the last 30 years, black African-American faculty on this campus is at 3%. That number's changed less than 1% in 30 years. I'd like to know what actually you're going to do, since none of these strategic plans seem to tie hiring African Americans to the actual funding that these colleges and departments get. So what are you going to do structurally? Because I tell you, some of us are tired of it. We've been doing this a long time. I'm the only black professor in my department's history. That's ridiculous. I've been here since 2002. Stop telling some of us what we need to do. I want to know what you're going to do. I hope you heard that. That's for Nick Jones. My name is Errol Henderson.
I can respond to the second part of your question, which is what is it that we're going to do? And I can assure you that we have a commitment centrally to provide resources to leadership in all of our colleges and campuses to help them develop a more diverse workforce, and that applies to faculty as well as staff. We're committed. We put resources on the table to assist with those hires, and we're committed to continue to do that, as well as insisting on, we don't manage every search that is done at every level and every unit of the university, but certainly the ones that we touch out of Old Main, we insist that thorough searches are done and that the pools of candidates are suitably diverse. That's what we do.
African Americans, 30 years, 3%. What do you say to that?
It seems to me like that's a pretty low number, and we haven't made the progress that we should have made. And I think we're committed to change that number moving forward.
How?
By investing resources and providing oversight to search processes to ensure that diverse pools are part of the process.
Okay, again, thank you very much. We are glad that everyone is passionate about this topic, and we want to hear from the audience, but for reasons that we have put forth already, it would be very helpful for everyone involved if you did bring the questions through us, and we will get them asked. Another question directly from this audience asked, what if the change that I personally want to create is being resisted by others, is met with that resistance? What can you do?
I think that should be expected in anything that we do. There's going to be resistance, but I think you have to be persistent. If there's an initiative that you have in mind, I'd be open to sitting down and having a conversation with you. If it's an initiative that certainly can move the university forward around diversity and inclusion, I'm willing to engage in a dialogue to see how I can best support it. So I'm open to any new initiatives that make sense for the university. I know my team in educational equity also has that philosophy. So please share that with me, and maybe I can help move that resistance to persistence.
I would just say that, as with so many things, it takes courage. Sometimes, the example David gave a few moments ago about the search committee, it takes courage to be the person in the search committee when it looks like you have a good set and you're ready to move forward. It takes courage to be the person who raises your hand and says, I don't think we're quite done yet. I'm not satisfied that we have turned over all the rocks that we need to be turning over to ensure that we have the pool that we have. It takes courage if you're an administrative assistant in a department and you, based on your interactions with students on a regular basis, see something happening in your department that you think is not conducive to an inclusive environment in your view. It takes courage to raise that issue with your supervisor or with the department head. And so I encourage you all to be courageous. You need to know that we're in this with you. We're all in. We have your back. And if you come forward with ideas and you have the courage to be the person who raises their hands, we will support you. We want to hear how we can do things better. And so do know that we have your back, and do please have the courage to raise your hand. That's how differences get made.
It does take courage, and in addition to what Nick suggested, I would also say, if your supervisor doesn't appear to have open ears to what you're suggesting, talk to that individual's supervisor. Talk to the unit's HR strategic partner. If that fails, bump it upstairs. And critically, as Nick suggested, and Marcus, persistence and courage are virtues in this setting. So do not take no for an answer. Keep driving.
And if we could build on that for just a moment, what resources are available either online or in person if someone feels that they're not getting through to their direct supervisor? You alluded to it there about setting it up the food chain, but so people know what is the process that they can go through, that they can feel that their voices are heard and can make that change that they are passionate about.
Well, as I said, they can go to their unit head, they can go to their unit's HR strategic partner. If they feel it's an even more serious matter, they can contact the Ethics and Compliance Hotline. I have encouraged and embraced an open door policy and have received workers and employees personally in my office to take up sensitive issues and grievances that they've had that they don't feel are being addressed appropriately or aggressively enough at the unit level. So that's an example of folks being persistent and pushing through and not just accepting the first answer that they get.
And we acknowledge that sometimes it can be uncomfortable. That's why the hotline resource exists. Some people use the hotline anonymously, some choose to identify themselves, but if you observe behaviors that you believe are run counter to our commitment as an institution to build an inclusive environment, we need to hear about those. And you should feel free, if you're uncomfortable identifying yourself, to use the hotline anonymously. I can assure you that every hotline complaint gets investigated. Every hotline complaint gets investigated, and some of them end up on David's desk, some of them end up on my desks, and some of them end up on our colleagues' desk. But every hotline complaint gets investigated, and if there is merit in the complaint, we will take the appropriate action.
We had a suggestion from the audience: when you're putting forward those search committees and you're trying to entice applicants, would you consider requiring a 500-word essay on diversity and inclusion from that applicant?
I think our search processes are pretty complex and arduous already. That's probably a tough expectation to have. For some of our, in some of our positions, we have hundreds of applications, and so that is a lot of work to expect everybody to write an essay. That said, I think one thing that we can take from that suggestion perhaps is that when we get down to the short list of candidates, this is certainly a question that the search committee should ask the individuals who are finalists. What are your views on this particular issue? What are examples of things that you have done in your career to advance a diverse and inclusive environment? What types of things do you think you could bring to the position that you are being considered for? Frankly, I don't think those questions are asked often enough. And this is where there is an opportunity for us all to think about doing that more often. Whether it's in written format or done verbally, I think the notion that this be something that is asked, I think, is a really good one.
And Ben, I think one of the luxuries of working in educational equity is that any and every finalist for positions in educational equity will have to speak to diversity and inclusion in an open forum setting such as this. So that's something that we have adopted in our search process because the work is essential to diversity and inclusion, and we certainly want to hear what our finalists have to say about the topic.
There's a lot of interest from the audience in this search for a more diverse faculty. And diverse, obviously, as you said at the beginning, it's not just one thing. Diversity means many different things. So is there any training that can be done to help people recognize that diversity that may not be readily apparent when you look at someone? So how can they know they're creating a more diverse faculty beyond just what they see?
Ben, I think as we think about the development of guidelines that might go out to all search committees around the topic of diversity and inclusion, we can think about providing some guidance again to folks along these lines. What should they be? What should they be looking for? What should their expectations be? And to provide some training along those lines, I don't think is a bad idea at all. So that's certainly something we can investigate further.
And to build on that, each time there's a faculty search committee comprised, Ken Lehrman actually comes out and charges each of those search committees, and he encourages everyone to keep in mind and be mindful of the diversity of the candidates from all different perspectives, and to step up to the plate when you have identified your finalist pool to ensure that hopefully one of those candidates might be from a diverse background.
Beyond the, and actually this is true because yesterday I charged a search committee for a dean appointment actually, and Ken was there, and Ken reinforced the message that I gave about ensuring that we have a diverse pool of candidates. The thing to be vigilant about, and this again is where we can have Ken, and if it's a search for a dean, me, or it could be a department head, come and charge a search committee, but then I leave the room and Ken leaves the room, and then the search committee goes to work. What is really important is what happens after the charge, right? And then this goes back again to what we were talking about before. As the search proceeds and the candidate pool is filtered down to a short list, every step of the way, you all must be vigilant that we are doing the right things and paying attention to important aspects. And again, be willing at sometimes maybe not opportune times to say, wait a second, time out. I think we need to rethink where we are, because we've sort of headed down this path and nobody is asking the types of questions that really need to be asked at this stage in the process. So can we pause for a moment and just reflect on where we are and whether we're heading in the direction that we really want to be heading, or we've gone off on some direction without thinking. That requires constant vigilance and again, courage on everybody's part to make sure that happens.
Thank you. We've been talking a lot about this particular aspect, and I want to make sure we get to more than one thing. So if we could move on beyond the hiring and look at another question that we've heard. As we alluded to just in the past, it's not just a matter of race. There are many different kinds of diversity. And this question from our audience is asking why there is not, I'm trying to make sure I get their wording correctly, but why there isn't a specific commission for employees with disabilities.
That's a great question. And actually, that question surfaced maybe about 7 or 8 years ago as well. Keith Jervis, the director of Student Disability Resources, he chairs a few years ago, chaired an advisory board on disability resources. This advisory board was comprised of individuals from the faculty, staff, and students. At the time, there was a question as to how can this advisory board become a commission. So the advisory board went back and forth in certain discussions about commission versus an advisory board. It was determined back then that the advisory board, once they came up with some goals of what they wanted to accomplish as a commission or an advisory board, most of what they wanted to accomplish around the awareness around disability resources was the awareness. And for the month of October, for example, this is Disability Awareness Month, the month of October. And this advisory board then changed into what is now Diversability. And Diversability is essentially an advisory board comprised, again, of faculty, staff, and students. And if you look again on the all-in calendar, you'll see that this month was dedicated to hiring practices and human resources specifically for individuals with disabilities. And that's essentially what was determined within the structure of this original Disability Advisory Board to now be known as Diversability. And Keith Jervis is still chairing that group. So if there's anyone interested in having additional dialogue about Diversability versus a commission, I would encourage you to reach out to Keith Jervis, and I know he's open to having additional conversations about it.
Thank you.
But it's a great question, actually.
So, Marcus, I'm involved with that committee. So this year, we did have like Marcus said, we had our focus was on employment with disabilities. And I was president of 2 of those events, one with Taryn Williams and one with David Torres. Can anyone hear me, by the way?
No.
Of course not. I'll try to speak louder.
Sir, I will repeat your question with the microphone.
I'll talk to you then.
We do not have a portable one. We're just going to, it's okay.
So, the question that was raised, a lot of the faculty and staff came to those programs, and they had other concerns beyond awareness. Their concerns really geared towards trying to not just focus on the functional impairments of disability, but the psychological piece that it brings on being on the campus, that disabilities sometimes are still seen as invisible. So, I always think about it, in a way that, if you are trying to be all in, which I was part of, I was at that event, and it was a beautiful, absolutely beautiful event. And I think that it really is something the body trying to be all in. I would like, hey, look at that. Thank you, sir. So one of the things I would, if possible, based on what you were saying today about what we can do, there were a lot of faculty and staff that were sending us emails asking, when can we get this going? We want to make sure that their concerns are being met, because we do well with students. I mean, we have the Office for Disability Services. And the concerns that came in from those faculty and staff, we didn't have any answers for them. So I think it's something that really is important. And if that's something that we are truly going to be on in, and that group wants to charge that, I would like to make sure that we have your support.
You have my support.
My man.
I'm a proponent. But again, the conversation starts with the experts in the area, and Bill Richman and Keith Jervis, I think, should be brought into that conversation.
Well, Bill Richman was actually one of them, actually. So.
There we go.
All right, we got you. Thank you, Mark.
Let's continue the dialogue. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
All right, if we could look at it more broad, take the 100-foot look at what we're talking about here, and why is it such a challenge for Penn State and all universities to create that diverse faculty and student body? Why is that a challenge for everyone?
Well, as sort of matter of fact as this response sounds, it's because it's hard. If it were easy, we would have just done it, and we wouldn't be having panels like this that are focused on diversity and inclusion. This has been a difficult thing for society to do, and I think it manifests itself in our institutions of higher ed, like Penn State. There is a long and a complex history that precedes us that has led us to this point, and we are trying, Penn State, we institutions of higher ed in particular, but Penn State for the purposes of this conversation, are trying to change something that history has ultimately created and led us to, and this is hard. And I think this is why the spirit of the all-in initiative is really important. It can't be that the administration alone or the leadership of the university does things. We can do a lot. We can facilitate, we can provide resource, and we are all in and willing to do that. But it really requires everybody across the university rolling up their sleeves and being ready to participate. And I think that's the opportunity we have. This is hard. We'd be doing it if it were easy. It's hard, and it requires everybody committed. That's where I hope we can get this year.
Yeah, and I really appreciate hearing that about the challenges of the work around diversity and inclusion. And that's what makes me really appreciate the work of our equity commissions, our Commission for Women, our Commission on Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual, Transgender, Queer Equity, and our Commission on Racial and Ethnic Diversity. These commissions take the lead around these important areas, and they provide counsel to President Barron and myself and others as to how we can continue to get better around these issues. It is difficult work, but these commissions are staffed with volunteers trying to make a difference, and the commissions actually are the prototype of what All In is about. I mean, these are volunteers that have dedicated themselves to this cause, and I think they've been very successful in many of their initiatives. So I appreciate the work of those three commissions.
And another of those, big picture questions that everyone is dealing with: how do you balance diversity and inclusion with academic freedom and freedom of expression?
Well, be here tomorrow evening at 7 o'clock in this auditorium, and we have a whole event that is dedicated to actually that particular issue. So I don't want to I don't want to avoid talking about it here, but that really is the place to hear, I think, a robust discussion. That's going to be streamed online too, I think. So even if you're not here at 7 o'clock, please participate. I think that'll be a great conversation.
So that's not a three-word answer? Okay, we've had some more questions coming in from the audience, and this is a really nice one. You guys talked about those that need to stand up and be courageous, whether it's in the hiring process, whether it's if you see something happening on campus that you know is wrong. Do you have any examples that you'd like to share with the audience of, moments where that happened?
Yeah, I can actually share one.
Please.
Just yesterday, I'm on several search committees. I don't want to give this particular search committee away, but we were establishing our finalists to present to the Provost on this particular search, and we had identified 6 individuals, and all of them had a name that could appear to be a male name. But I knew of one of the candidates, and I knew that although the name you couldn't identify based on the name what the pronoun was, I knew that that individual was from a different gender. And but I allowed the search to continue, but one of those search committee members stepped up and just said, I hope that we're considering some women in this final list of candidates. And this was just yesterday, and then I had an opportunity to share, as well as other members of that committee, to share that they were aware that at least one of the candidates was actually indeed a woman. So these are some examples that people are feeling comfortable to stepping up and having dialogues about, but that's just one example that just recently occurred.
And when you witness that in person and when you guys are hearing that, does that validate what you're trying to say here? And does that give you hope and encouragement?
Yes, it does. I can cite another instance. I can't talk too much about the specifics because of confidentiality considerations, but there was an instance where an employee was being really subjected to some rather brutish intimidation and harassment on the part of her supervisor. She did speak up, and it eventually resulted in the termination of that individual. So another example of somebody that had to have incredible courage and was subjecting herself to risk by stepping forward and pointing out the behavior that was obviously wrong and objectionable. But by doing so, we were able to intervene in a situation and set it right. Without her having that courage to come forward in the first place, we would not have been able to take that necessary step. So again, the importance of courage and being willing to stand up for what you value and believe in is vitally important, and to know that the university will have your back when you do so.
And if we could go on with that, if you could detail what those resources, if someone finds themselves in a situation like that, is there a website that is an easy to get to place where they can find those resources?
It's the Ethics and Compliance Hotline. That's well publicized. It's accessible through our homepage. It is your unit HR officers that can act as resources. And if you don't feel like you can go in confidence to that individual for whatever reason, again, you can contact Regis Becker, who's our Chief Ethics and Compliance Officer, or the hotline. But there are various conduits that people can use to make sure that these kinds of issues are understood and addressed.
I have to give this as an example in the Courage Department. And it's not about me, it's about my boss and your boss, the president. It wasn't too long ago where during the Black Lives Matter protest in front of Old Main, Eric was out there as president of the university, and he raised his hands. He raised his hands in support of what those students were gathered to express. And I think, as you probably are aware, there were many people who didn't like that he did that. There were many people who supported him for doing that. There may be some of you in the room who supported him for doing that. There may be some of you in the room who didn't particularly like that he did that. But that took courage for him to raise his hands like that and stand really in solidarity with our students, and in particular our students, and something that was important to them. So that's the person that we have leading this university, and he is willing to stand up and express courage in the way that he did that particular day. I think that should give you confidence that this is something that this institution at its highest levels is really serious about.
This question came in this morning and says, in light of recent Justice Department settlement with Miami University, what steps are being taken here at PSU to ensure that we are in compliance with Web Content Accessibility Guidelines 2.0, that are creating standards for our students and learning differences?
I'd like to learn more about that particular recent situation at Miami. But a few years ago, some of you may remember that the National Federation for the Blind had come to Penn State and assessed our websites and online materials, and they found that we were not up to par in accessibility for the blind and the visually impaired. Since that, we've made a concerted effort to improve where we are with accessibility and captioning and things of that nature on our website. So I'm not sure how that relates directly to what recently occurred at University of Miami, Ohio, but I certainly would like to read into that to see where we are in terms of accessibility around that new issue that you just raised.
Thank you. So this person wrote in, that students of color have been subjected to racist remarks when they have taken a stand against inequality. And what is being done to ensure that there is a safe space for them to express themselves?
I hate to dominate this, but this...
Don't worry, I'll get in there.
For number one, since 2001, the university, we have created a report bias website for our students to report acts of intolerance and bias that may occur. We have individuals in our Multicultural Resource Center here on campus that serve as a diversity advocate as well as a counselor for our students. So anytime a student reports an act of bias to this site, that individual student will be contacted and called in for a one-on-one meeting to find out more details about the situation that may have occurred. We also have great resources in the Paul Robeson Cultural Center. Also, counseling and psychological services has also really been an advocate in being more visible and supporting students if they go through some of these challenges around discrimination or bias. So some great resources are in place, but certainly we can improve upon those resources, but we do have some mechanisms in place to support our students should they be faced with certain challenges of that sort.
I would just add that it's hard to stop this from occurring. And if you want to know more about that, tomorrow, 7 p.m. in here, there'll be a great discussion about that, I think. But as Marcus indicated, I think our emphasis is on providing support for people who end up as victims of this type of unpleasant conduct. It's not a big surprise to all of us where some of this comes from. I mean, we're in an election season. I'm sure none of us have observed any of this sort of behavior going on at all outside the university across the country as we move to November 8th. It's out there, but I think the more that we as a community can come together and together say, and again, we have resources to support victims, but to the extent that you all, if you observe or hear this type of speech or behavior have the courage to say, you know what, that is not acceptable to me. That is not the Penn State that I believe in. That is not the community that we represent, and are willing to obviously not place yourself at risk, but be willing to say that is not what Penn State stands for, and that's not what I stand for. I think that's really something important that we can think about doing moving forward as well.
And you,
I have a follow-up to that question. We're talking about resources at University. We're talking about resources at University Park. We have Commonwealth campuses, and someone who represented and was on a Penn State Commonwealth campus, those resources are here. What are some of those resources, or how can our students at the campuses and our staff at the campuses get that same opportunity? Because we don't, all the campuses don't have the same resources that University Park has.
Yeah, actually, the report bias is a Penn State reporting system. And we've worked with all 24 campuses on the report bias site. So for example, if a report bias incident comes in from any one of our campuses, it will come into several administrators across the university. I'm one that will receive that report. And then we will contact that campus. We'll probably contact either the DSA or the DAA, and in some cases, the chancellor as well. So we've connected with the campuses around that report bias site.
thank you. You talked earlier about some of the town and gown relationships and some of the successes that you've had there. This person wanted to know, what can you say to students who might not feel overly comfortable about venturing beyond the confines of the university grounds, whether it be to State College or some of those other campuses? What assurances do they have that the greater population is accepting as well?
Well, it's a difficult challenge. Obviously, we're part of many different communities operating as we do in 24 locations, each of which has its own unique local context. But I think one of the things we try to do across the board, wherever a Penn State location is to be found, is to engage very proactively with our community, to partner with the surrounding citizens and community organizations to build a set of shared values and directions that we all can embrace. I certainly think that's the case here in general in University Park and the borough of State College and the surrounding townships. I really feel as though we have a great channel of communication that's opened up with those different municipal jurisdictions and their, the citizenry and the politicians that lead them. And I would hope that that same condition is also present where there's affirmative outreach to our Commonwealth campus communities. And I feel certain that each of the chancellors and their leadership teams on the campuses are engaged in similar kinds of outreach activities. In fact, I know that is the case. Is there more that we can do? Always more that we can do to make sure that we're being as proactive as possible at all Penn State locations to be sure that that kind of community engagement is healthy and taking place to the degree that it should, to make sure that we're building a set of shared values that are broader than just that which we find on our campuses.
And is it easy?
No.
Not always. Many of you have been around Penn State much longer than I have, and know in particular at some of our campus locations there's been some challenges over time in terms of the interaction of the campuses with the local community and the environment that exists in the local community. So this is something that we just have to keep chipping away at and have sleeves rolled up to try to address.
It's a work in progress, Ben. If you permit me just a personal anecdote. When I was an undergraduate student here in the mid-1970s, this campus was 2/3 male. It was at least 97, if not 98% Caucasian. And I look at it today with respect to the student body, and I see a remarkable transformation that's taken place. Did it happen overnight? Certainly not. Nick just said, chip away. That's exactly what we've done with respect to the diversity of this student body. We did not accomplish that overnight. It took generations. Did it happen fast enough? No. Can the same thing happen with faculty and staff diversity? Yes, absolutely. And I think what you're hearing the three of us committing to as leaders of the university is to start that journey. It needs to embrace all of us, but we are committed and have demonstrated through the diversification of the student body over a period of time, this institution can do it. And with your help, we can apply those same techniques, and we can be just as persistent, doggedly, with building diversity within our faculty and staff. So I ask you all to engage with us toward that end. We've demonstrated before that this institution can do it, and we will do it also with respect to our employees.
Yeah, on the community front, I'd like to take this opportunity to applaud Pastor Harold McKenzie of Unity Church and former Chief of Police Tom King. A few years ago, right at the outset of the Black Lives Matter movement, the two of them in the community formed a new group. CCU is the acronym, Campus and Community in Unity. Essentially, both Pastor McKenzie and Chief King serve as co-chair of this ongoing community and campus group of individuals to talk about town and gown issues. And so I think that's one of the outlets and initiatives that exists here in the State College community that's connected back to the university.
We are at about 10 till 5, so I'd like to give you each an opportunity to give us some closing remarks. And something tells me you want to give another plug to tomorrow's event?
How'd you guess?
Marcus, we start with you?
Yes. In closing, when we think about inclusivity moving forward, I just want to share a situation that I was recently involved in with my family here in State College. On the Saturday before the Ohio State game, my children and I went to breakfast at Cracker Barrel. And as many of you know how Cracker Barrel is set up, where you come in, you have one side is a bunch of games and candy, and then the other side is a place where you sit down to eat. So my children gravitated to the games and candy side. And
Sure, Marcus.
and I joined them as well. But eventually got them to come back, and we had breakfast together. And when at the conclusion of our breakfast, I had asked the server for the check or the bill, and she had indicated that a group that was eating in Cracker Barrel before they had left their credit card number on file and said that they wanted to pay for my family's meal. And I just asked, who were those individuals? But what did they say? What did they look like? And the server said that they did not want to be identified. They just said that they appreciated seeing you with your family, and they wanted to pay for your meal. And my wife got emotional, but I just wanted to share that with you, because when we talk about inclusivity and inclusive excellence, that was an opportunity that my wife felt included. We were able to share this with our children and show that there's goodwill people, a random act of kindness that just occurred for us, and this is something that has never happened to me before. So I think those are the steps that we can take to build our community and make others feel included. And what I take away from that is the next time that I'm having a meal at a restaurant, I want to be the one next time to identify a family and anonymously pay for their meal and just kind of walk out. And hopefully that cycle will continue. So I just wanted to share that with everyone.
Where are you going for dinner tonight? So I, by hook or by crook, I'm going to ask my question, and I'm going to need your help, because I'm asking it to you, and I need a short response from, let's say, 5 brave people. And my question is, tell me one thing, just one thing, one idea you have that could make Penn State feel like a more inclusive environment. It needs to be short because we need to repeat it back through the mic so that people at the campuses can hear it. But I want to see 5 hands, people willing to tell me what one thing they would do would be. Oh, we've got some volunteers. Yes.
I hope that everyone comes out to our run, walk, and roll. If every one of you comes out this weekend, we have another event for diversity because these are disabled Penn State athletes, and this is our fundraising. So I am hoping that if you want to run a very fast time from Rec Hall to the IM building, you'll be at the 9 a.m., and you can also roll, and our wheelchair racers will be right there with you. Otherwise, come at 9:30 and walk. And you can do the costume contest if you get all of your, and come down and we'll judge the costume on that too. So please be part of us.
Okay, I see one up there and one, your hand was up. Yes, okay, we'll get.
I appreciated the emphasis on the role of the individual, but I think one thing that's really important is for us to have a space for individuals to discuss their own personal biases and prejudices, because often when we talk about these issues, we talk about them as they're something outside ourselves. Somebody else is excluding these people. It's a system excluding these people. No, it's us as individuals, and it's because of our own sometimes conscious, sometimes unconscious biases. But we have a lot of conversations about these issues, but none that really touch on those deep questions about why did you not choose that person for the job when, if you look at that person, they were all on paper, they were qualified, oh, they just didn't fit. No, they weren't the same ethnicity as you. So we need to ask those questions and have space to ask those questions in forums like this.
Great question, great comment, thank you.
Oh, and as you bring the microphone over there, the reason why I brought up the Cracker Barrel incident, I just wanted to use as an opportunity that if you are watching this live stream, I just want to personally thank you from the bottom of my heart for that. Thank you so much.
Just a quick note. I think it is really critical. We've talked about all of our individual roles, our personal roles, but I think as someone, and I'll own it, and for all of you in leadership positions, we cannot afford to not hold one another and those in leadership accountable. And that means something concrete, measurable, and with consequences.
Great comment, thank you.
Something very simple that's been on the table for a long time, and that is faculty is evaluated based on teaching service and research. Include diversity stuff in that process, and not as separate in service, but separate and something that includes and moves toward your personal movement in the university. So the diversity becomes as important as teaching and research and service.
Thank you. I think we had a couple up the front, or 3 up the front here.
All right, I'll try to make it brief. I would like more discussion and visibility for our LGBTQ community in these kind of town hall events and around the campus. I feel like that's an area where we could definitely improve.
Thank you.
No offense, but we have a lot of white guys as senior leaders here. We need some more diversity at our top levels. I'm an administrator, Marcus is an administrator, but there are not enough top level, senior level administrators. That goes a long, long way.
You, and in the front.
Hello, as a second-year master's student in the higher education program and a student of Dr. Moses Davis, one of the things that we've been talking about is the othering that happens to identities, and I think that we could really do some work with the students in changing the way that they view what is normal and then what is othered. And one of the strategic ways we can do that is trying to unite with the populations that we have at Rockview, Benner, as well as CCCF, and really working with people who have who are dealing with issues of mental health, as well as issues of socioeconomic status in the education, gaps in the education system, and by pairing with those and providing service opportunities to do service learning.
Thank you. Maybe one more here, then we better stop, and I'll cede the floor to David.
I think there should be special learning modules for people from diverse backgrounds so they can compete better, drop some of the requirements for the supervisory course. You have to be a supervisor. Well, I think we should have an advanced learning modules, and also there should be a system where if we have a person that wants to be promoted, or maybe we know their job's ending, maybe because of a grant, that we have a system we can reach out to other places in the Penn State community and say, I have a really good employee, I would like you to consider them, and not wait till they're in the last poll, because I think disabilities are really hard to identify in a poll.
Thank you. Thank you. I know you were courageous. I saw other hands that were coming up, or people were tempted, but this is great feedback. It doesn't have to stop here. You can send us emails. I think we either do or we're going to have a mechanism on the All-In website for you to be able to send comments and make suggestions, and I can assure you that all such suggestions will be looked at and carefully considered. So thanks for that feedback. David?
I'm reminded that in the midst of World War II, Winston Churchill told the British people, I can promise you nothing but blood, tears, toil, and sweat. What he was asking of them is not dissimilar to what he was asking of the British people. What we're asking of you is perhaps not as existential as what they were going through, but what he was suggesting was they needed tremendous courage, they needed tremendous persistence, they were in it for the long haul. And that is what I think we're saying Penn State is in this diversity and inclusion theme and focus for the long haul. We're asking you all to embrace it. That's what All In is truly all about. We're not going to make that change that we want to see and that we all yearn for overnight, but through that courage and that persistent action, through all of our sort of dogged determination and focus, over the course of time, we will win that marathon race, but it will require all of us to be all in. But this is, after all, the community that says, who are we? We are Penn State, and I know that embracing this together, we can make that great progress. So thank you all for coming out this afternoon and for sharing your thoughts and perspectives, as well as hearing from us. So truly appreciate it.
Thank you.
And we are working on that All-In website where you can add in information, you can make your comments, but in the meantime, I would like to direct you to our survey. I'm going to use that as a segue. Not only can you tell us how we're doing with these town halls and how we can better reach you and make these more effective and helpful to you, but there is a question on there where we're asking for your feedback in general on just what they were discussing, and is at the same website, tinyurl.com, PSU Town Hall, October 2016. One more time, tinyurl.com/PSU Town Hall, October 2016. Please go there, give us your honest thoughts, and we will do everything we can. I want to thank all of you for attending today, both in person and online. Thank the three of you so much for taking time out of your schedule to answer these questions. And I would also like to thank our partners in this event today, the University Staff Advisory Council, and I'd like to bring up the President, John Ely. He wants to say a few words as well.
Thank you, Ben. Hello, everyone. Thank you all for participating locally or remotely in today's town hall meeting and taking the time to contribute to this discussion about how the university can be an inviting place for all of us to work and study. We especially appreciate the insightful input from Provost Nick Jones, Deb Gray, Senior Vice President for Finance and Business, and Marcus Whitehurst, Vice President for Educational Equity, on addressing the faculty and staff questions and concerns. We welcome any additional questions and further discussions via the University Staff Advisory Council website. Please take a look and send us your questions, and we'll address it further. With that said, thank you all again, and have a nice evening. Thank you.